Welcome to This Explainer. We spend a ton of time talking about horsepower and 0 to 60 times, but honestly, the physics required to safely bring a speeding 4,000-pound vehicle to a dead stop is just as fascinating. Today, we're unpacking the mechanical engineering that makes it all happen.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the secret to stopping, then look at how disc brakes and drum brakes actually work. After that, we'll dive into the magic hydraulic push, and finally, how we stay safe with ABS. Let's get right into it.
All right, picture this. You're cruising down the highway at 60 miles per hour in a machine that weighs literally 2 tons. Suddenly, you need to stop. You press this tiny pedal with your foot, and within seconds, this massive metal box safely comes to a complete halt. How on earth does a gentle push from your foot overcome all that incredible forward momentum? Well, I'll tell you right now, it's not magic. It's pure physics and brilliant mechanical design working perfectly together.
Section 1. The secret to stopping. So, the core concept we need to talk about here is friction. That's the resistance created when two surfaces rub together. It's basically the invisible grip that slows things down. If you've ever dragged your shoe along the pavement to stop a skateboard or a scooter, you know exactly what I mean. You've relied on this exact resistance. And that resistance leads us straight to the ultimate secret to stopping, which is heat. You see, a vehicle's braking system is essentially a giant energy conversion machine. It takes the kinetic energy, that forward motion of your car, and turns it into thermal energy, or heat. By applying intense friction to a turning wheel, the brakes force the car to slow down, creating a massive amount of heat as a byproduct. So if you're wondering where all that speed goes, it literally vanishes into thin air as heat. Moving on to Section 2. How disc brakes work.
If you take a peek through the spokes of most modern car wheels, you'll see a flat, shiny metal disc. That's the brake rotor, and it spins at the exact same speed as your wheel. Now, hovering over a section of that disc is a clamp-like device called a caliper, and this houses the brake pads. When you hit the brakes, that caliper powerfully squeezes the brake pads against the flat sides of the spinning disc. It's kind of like the handbrakes on a bicycle, right? Where the rubber pads squeeze the spinning tire rim, literally the exact same principle. This squeezing creates immense friction, generates all that heat we just talked about, and brings the wheel to a stop.
Next up, Section 3. How drum brakes work.
Now, a drum brake builds a totally different kind of friction trap. Instead of a flat disc getting squeezed from the outside, a drum brake uses a bowl-shaped metal drum that rotates with the wheel. Hidden completely inside this drum are curved metal plates covered in friction material, and these are known as brake shoes. When you press the brake pedal, a cylinder inside the drum forces these curved shoes to expand outward, pushing them incredibly hard against the inside walls of the spinning drum. So it's really an inside-out approach to creating that vital friction. So, why use one over the other? Well, it mostly comes down to how they handle heat. Remember, disc brakes squeeze from the outside and are completely exposed to the air. Because of this, they cool down super fast. They're the absolute go-to for modern cars because they give you superior, consistent stopping power. Drum brakes, on the other hand, push outward from the inside, so they're fully enclosed. This makes them cheaper to manufacture and really durable, which is why you'll still spot them on the rear wheels of some cars or on big, heavy-duty trucks. But because they're enclosed, they have a much harder time shedding heat. If they get too hot during heavy, prolonged use, like, say, riding the brakes down a steep mountain, they can suffer from something called brake fade. That's where the heat buildup actually reduces the friction and you lose stopping power. Definitely not a fun situation.
All right, Section 4, the magic hydraulic push.
Okay, so here's the big question. How does a gentle tap from your foot generate enough force to clamp those pads down on a speeding car? The secret lies in a beautiful piece of physics known as Pascal's principle. This principle basically states that when you apply pressure to a confined, incompressible fluid, that pressure is transmitted completely equally in all directions. In a hydraulic system, this lets us do something amazing. We can actually multiply force. By pressing a small piston on one end of a fluid-filled tube, we can move a much larger piston on the other end with a vastly magnified amount of force. It literally turns a tiny tap from your shoe into a giant, unyielding grip at the wheels.
Here's how it plays out in your car. When you push the brake pedal, that mechanical motion pushes a rod into what's called the master cylinder, effectively squishing a special, incompressible brake fluid. Because of Pascal's principle, this fluid has nowhere to go but through a network of sturdy hoses leading directly to the wheels. When that highly pressurized fluid reaches the calipers in a disc brake or the wheel cylinders in a drum brake, it pushes the pads or shoes with mathematically multiplied force. It's essentially this invisible fluid-based lever connecting your foot directly to the spinning wheels. How cool is that?
Finally, Section 5, Staying Safe with ABS.
Now, sometimes things go wrong. Imagine slamming on the brakes on a wet or icy road. That multiplied hydraulic force we just talked about, it's so strong it will stop the wheels from turning completely. The wheels lock up, your tires totally lose their grip on the pavement, and suddenly the car is skidding completely out of your control. That is where the anti-lock braking system, or ABS, steps in. ABS is essentially a smart computer hooked up to sensors on all 4 of your wheels. If it senses that a wheel is about to lock up during a hard stop, it instantly and rapidly pumps the brakes for you way faster than humanly possible. It's adjusting the hydraulic pressure in milliseconds, which allows the wheels to keep turning just enough to maintain traction. This means you can safely steer away from danger while still slowing down. It's an absolute lifesaver.
All right, let's take a quick breath and recap the incredible engineering we just unlocked. We learned that the true stars of stopping are friction and heat, working together to convert forward motion into thermal energy. We saw how disc brakes squeeze a spinning rotor to stop and how drum brakes push outward against an enclosed metal bowl. And, of course, none of it would be possible without hydraulics, that magic fluid push that multiplies the force of your foot to safely halt thousands of pounds of moving steel.
Physics and mechanics are constantly working all around us, transforming energy from one form to another. So I've got a challenge for you. Next time you're riding your bicycle or even just driving to the grocery store, take a second. Can you spot the friction at work? Can you imagine the heat being generated? Honestly, once you understand the hidden science of how things stop, the mechanical world becomes a whole lot more fascinating. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.